Hey guys, Andrew here, and welcome back to my channel. So, if you don't know what I do by now, basically if it's Canadian, I want to talk about it. Now, in one of my older videos, I went on about high school, but post-secondary, well, that's interesting too. College and university are your first chances at real freedom. It's your chance to try new things, dress differently, and discover who you truly are. But it can also be a difficult time period. You're away from home and all the things you know, and you may not have a shoulder to cry on. But if you are lucky, you will find a clique to call your own. And with that very obvious segue, I'm going to talk about today's show, Undergrads. Undergrads was a 2001 adult animation that aired on MTV and Teletoon. The show is the brainchild of Pete Williams, a New York City film student who in 1997 entered a contest during winter break to pitch a pilot to MTV. He submitted a pencil test based on his four friends. Now, a little bit of trivia here. Out of everybody from the clique, only Gimpy liked their on-screen personality. Pete would win, and he would spend the next few months working on his pilot. When it was time to show it, the test audience hated it, and he would go back to school. But things had changed since then. Actually getting hands-on experience and getting to work with modern equipment, school just didn't feel the same way, and Pete still had drive in him, so he decided to drop out. And with the help of his parents, he decided to lease a top-of-the-line computer to do animation. Undeterred, he went back to MTV and using the few contacts that he acquired there, pitched a few more cartoons. They were all rejected, but MTV was impressed with his turnaround. So they decided to team him up with writers Andy Reingold and Josh Kagan and get him to work on Undergrads again. This time they came up with a new pilot that went over much better, and in 2001, Undergrads hit the airwaves. The show focuses on four lifelong friends and their post-secondary lives. They all attend different schools but within the same area. So first off, there's Cal. Cal is the dumb one of the group. He speaks with a slurp, and for the most part, he's more of a follower and less of a leader. But he's also a ladies' man to a certain degree. He doesn't do anything to really attract them, they're just naturally attracted to him, to the point of frustration as people's girlfriends will literally walk away from them to talk to him. He attends State U alongside his buddy, Nitz. Rocco is a member of the fraternity Alpha Alpha. At a young age, he saw a frat movie, and it was permanently seared into his mind how to act in order to be accepted. In the first episode, you see that he makes a specific effort to make an ass of himself, and it continues throughout the series. He likes partying, getting drunk, and hitting on women, which he fails at miserably compared to Cal. But despite that, he's shown to have a softer side. Whenever his friends need him, he's there for them, and even though he messes up, he cares about them. He attends City College, a community college. Then there's Gimpy. Gimpy is a computer wizard slash hacker. He's obsessed with Star Wars, barely leaves his room, and is the alpha of his floor. After he outsmarted their previous leader, Spud, who is obsessed with Star Trek. Gimpy is the brains of the operation. More often than not, when a character needs help, he is able to help them from afar. Even so much as getting a clock for Nitz without leaving his room. He attends Techerson Tech, you guessed it, technical school. And lastly, there's Nitz. Nitz is the everyman of the group. He is much more down to earth than his friends, but that doesn't mean he's without flaws. One of his biggest flaws is he tends to forget what he's doing or drop everything for Kimmy Burton, a girl he's had a crush on since high school who now attends State U. Honestly, Nitz is kind of the moral center of the group. You see in episodes like Identity Crisis and New Friends that they would fall flat without him, and they need him. He is an integral part of the group, and he kind of keeps them all in line. There's also Jesse. Jesse is Nitz's friend and the only friend he's made in school. She's an alternative girl with purple hair who studies film. She's based on Jean Yeo, the actress who voices her. She hangs out with people like Dan, the human laugh track, Rob Brody, who's constantly dropping names,
DreamWorks, Toby Maguire, Drew Barrymore, Julia Roberts,
and Kruger, who says things like,
Brody, when the did Robert Altman become Bob? Before or after he your mother?
and
Look, you moron, you couldn't sell your to a paraplegic sightless monkey.
interesting thing to note, he's voiced by Yannick Besson, who plays William Murdoch on Murdoch Mysteries. And lastly, there's
the Dougler.
So what this show does is, although it's set at college and university, it doesn't really focus on the college and university academic side, more the social side. It has the characters deal with things like peer pressure, traditions, drinking, and sex, as well as interpersonal relationships. When you watch the show, you'll notice that they sort of pair off different members of the clique. So one episode could be about, say, Cal and Gimpy, or Rocco and Nitz. Or it could be about, say, how the group functions without Nitz, like an identity crisis. Or one of my personal favorites, Nitz and Gimpy, in the episode Rivalries, wherein which they end up facing off against each other for trivia supremacy. In the final episode, it looks like the group might be splitting off. Gimpy is going to move to an off-island oil rig with his men. Cal is going to become an RA. Nitz is still technically undecided about school. And Rocco's going to return to the frat. Nitz has finally hooked up with Kimmy Burton, and Jessie has let out her feelings about him, and we're left to ponder, what does Nitz choose? But we may not have had to, because originally the plan was the second season would have Jessie and Kimmy coming back with boyfriends. But of course, we didn't get that far because the show got canceled. You see, when the show aired on MTV, they didn't know what to do with it. Originally, they had the show right across from The Simpsons time-wise, so that was a suicide move. After 3 episodes, they decided to move it around, but they couldn't find a place that it would fit. With this being MTV, they decided, we've got other things to air, we can take the loss, and they canceled the show. But here in Canada, things were a little bit different. Okay, so by now you're probably saying, hey, Andrew, Undergrads is American. What gives? And you would be right technically. Technically. You see, this is a very common practice in the television industry where 2 networks team up and the show is produced in Canada. The Canadian network gets to receive tax cuts and benefits, while the US network has their dollar go further, and therefore the cost of production goes down. The show was animated by Ottawa-based Funbag Entertainment and Decode, which is now known as DHX Media. The show also featured numerous Canadian actors and musicians. As a little bit of a fun note, I think anybody who grew up watching YTV probably recognized this voice.
Hey, you gotta check out this guy in 543. He's never coming out of his room again because he burned off his face in bio class.
This was enough for the CRTC to consider this show Canadian content. And in 2002, it took home a Gemini, our version of an Emmy for most popular website for a TV series. This is also where the show got its second chance. The network that picked it up here in Canada was Teletoon, and they made Undergrads a part of their late night programming block, The Detour. They made more of an effort with the show. They decided to air it at the start of the fall semester, so it would likely line up more with college students. And the show got a full run, but there was also an added perk. You see, there needs to be X amount of Canadian content on television per day in order to air everything else. So, because Undergrads was Canadian and they owned it, this meant that they could air the show as many times as they want. And sometimes they would air this show a few times in the night. Usually around 3 or 4 a.m. they would repeat it. Not that I know personally. But then they did something else. They aired the show continuously. They couldn't afford to just throw this show away. And because of that, and along with uploads on LimeWire, the show started to garner a fan base. And when it was announced that there wasn't going to be a second season, fans started flooding the official website trying to find ways to push a second season. One of the original ideas we had, based on the fact that Family Guy got renewed because of DVD sales, was to buy the DVD in the hopes that MTV would think the same. Unfortunately, that didn't work. We moved on to some other ideas. The problem was that MTV had the rights to the show, and it could not move forward without big US money. So we need to find somebody else. We did letter writing campaigns to Adult Swim and Comedy Central, but neither one was willing. But we still fought. During this time, Teletoon would reach out to Pete Williams, and they would inform him about the fan base in Canada pushing for a second season. So, seeing the Canadian fan base behind it, he supported them fully and tried to back them up. He came up with a few ideas of his own. First, there was the idea of, if we couldn't get a network, let's finish it in a comic book. You can see there's a little bit of a comic book style within the pilot, so this doesn't seem like a far off idea. Unfortunately, again, the rights. There was the idea of a backdoor pilot. It's going to be a series called We Got Issues, and it was going to be set in a comic book shop. Personally, I like to believe it would have been the comic shop from Work Study. They would have started pushing Undergrads characters in there as customers in the hopes of making it a secret reboot. But that didn't work as well. But hope, oh no, hope was not lost. In the late 2010s, our prayers were finally answered, and Undergrads was given a chance to have a movie after MTV gave Pete Williams the right to produce a feature film. Now, this was a big deal to us. We had fought for years for this. And finally, we were going to get an answer. I'm a little bit sad we never got a second season, but, I'm glad that we get to give a conclusion to this story. Within a few months of the announcement, a Kickstarter would follow. And this would include perks such as signed scripts, posters, memorabilia, and a chance to be animated into the background. In total, they raised $145,000. To me, Undergrads is a big part of my Canadian experience. I was a teenager watching the show on the detour repeatedly, and it kinda shaped who I am. I gravitated more towards Gimpy and Nits in the sense of being a nerd, and seeing characters like that on screen, it made me happy. Now, yes, you could still argue with me about, oh, well, it's still American, but here's the thing. This is the one thing you need to realize. There were other shows around this time. There was Oblongs, there was Mission Hill, there was Downtown. And they all got the one season. And they all got canceled just the same. But you know what the difference is? Because Undergrads kept airing here, the Canadian fan base adopted this show and it rallied hard for it. None of those other shows can say the same. If it wasn't for Canada, there wouldn't be a movie. Undergrads would have been one and done. And I guess technically the creator is Canadian now, so we've got that going for us, which is nice. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for me. What did you think of Undergrads? What were some of your favorite moments? What are your favorite quotes? Hell, who's your favorite character? For me, my favorite quote has to be,
Fine! All of you can go to hell!
How many times do I have to ask you kids to stop telling me to go to hell?
every time. Alright, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. Hey, just you do you. Alright guys, I'm Andrew, and I'll see you later.